The last several weeks have been tough for now former Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz. He faced multiple complaints and lawsuits centered around mistreatment of women. Now, the former chief was personally accused of predatory behavior towards and grooming of female officers, one in particular who claimed that he sought a romantic relationship with her. But the chief, who is married with 3 kids, has not been able to defend himself with a pretty important reality that could have ended at least some of the accusations. So the former chief joins me in studio. Former Chief Adrian Diaz, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump right in with some of the charges against you. They include, courtesy of Officer Valerie Carson, in a tort claim that has been filed, a $5 million tort claim with 3 other female officers. It implied that you would try to walk in on her while she was getting changed at the office, that you tried to invite yourself to her home under the guise of housework that could have been done on her behalf, that you might try to kiss her during a New Year's Eve event where you both were working, and that you were overtly chatty because you wanted to have some sort of romantic relationship. Now, you've obviously denied the claims, but people deny things all the time, so why should anyone believe you?
You know, it's absurd, and I haven't had that opportunity to just be able to tell my story. It's a story that it's struggled with over the last 4 years, that I'm a gay Latino man. And not, it doesn't bother me. It's more of my concern for my kids, because they're going to have to deal with a lot of the struggles that I might not have to deal with. I have a lot of support. I have a lot of connections and a lot of different work that I've done in every community. But I've not been able to just come out, and that has been a struggle. When you live for 4 years, in a level of secrecy, in the sense of, when I kind of knew many years ago, you try to find that right time to say, okay, this is going to be the time for me to come out. And people will always tell you, don't come out until you're ready. Mm-hmm. And it was, a struggle, because I had been married for, at that time, 16 years. And you have initially, we hadn't even gone through COVID. So we were, kind of in the midst of like a variety of different changes that were happening in the world. And then, COVID hit, George Floyd hit. I was then appointed as interim chief. So then that wasn't a good time, because when you're being, up for a job, there's a thought that like, oh, he cried, or he's sensitive, or he's not going to be able to handle the pressures of the work. And I took our department through some of the most difficult times and challenges in our history. A reset a consent decree, dealing with the death of an officer, defund movement, staffing losses, violent crime up, and we've tackled each and every one of them. But there's never a good time to then say, hey, I am a gay man. And then the accusations started coming. And in my head, I'm like, it's clear that these aren't true. And no one gave me an opportunity. I've sat 11 months on an investigation that they haven't interviewed anybody. And
now, who's they?
Inspector General. And now at this time, I've stepped aside. I wanted to make sure that the department moves forward and the city moves forward. But for me, it's also an opportunity to tell my truth, and really just become much more of who I am. And I have the support of my family and Kelly. But that's a struggle.
Yeah. You told us a little bit of the timeline. You say specifically the last 4 years have been the toughest. Mm-hmm. What was that like day one when you accepted that you were gay?
I think when you kind of initially you challenge yourself with it, and you say, nah, that's not me, because I've always identified as straight for so long, and then being married, but then something just hit me, and it just kind of reflected to say, this isn't me. and I need to just be able to tell that truth. I need to be able to explain. And I think it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of the work that I've done, over the course of my career has been in the LGBT community. It has been in pretty much every different demographic community. But, you start to then realize that, maybe this is who I am. And I think the world tells you, usually you think kind of this way. It's like, you're supposed to get married, have kids, white picket fence. And then you realize that maybe that isn't you. And I was just reading this article just in the last couple of days about Colonel Edward Thomas Ryan, who's 85 years old, and he's, he ended up passing away, and he ended up explaining that he lived as a gay man and struggled to tell anybody about it because he was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be that person.
Did it just hit you, or did you always know but you were repressing that?
No, that's a good question because, I think it kind of was inside that you just don't really recognize. Because it didn't just hit me. It didn't just one day and
You didn't just wake up and say, I feel gay.
Yeah, I feel gay. And I think you start to kind of wonder, you start to not have that attraction to women. You start to realize that that isn't where you start to have your attraction to men. And you start to then realize there's certain characteristics that, you find in. And I think that's when you start to then go, this isn't going away. And then that's kind of where you start to then realize this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to then wonder, does anybody else see it in you? And, because I think you're always, because I was married, I think people had no idea because they're just assuming, well, he's got kids, he's married, there's no possible way. And even for Kelly, we've
Your wife.
Kelly, the wife, we've kind of worked through some of our challenges. She's known for a long time, and we have different sleeping arrangements, and we've worked through how we're going to support the kids. And that was one of the biggest things for me was making sure that my kids wake up with both of us. And I think people have to realize that this is kind of your new family. It's your new structure. I can't guarantee that that's the way it's always going to be for us. And I know that that's a struggle for Kelly, is that, she's felt abandoned and rejected. But I think she understands that she wants me to live who I am. And she's been very supportive of that.
Yeah. And no one ever knows how that relationship becomes after something like this, right? I mean, I imagine, to your point, she's feeling rejected, although that's obviously not your intent, but I don't know how anyone maybe personally would not be able to feel that way in some regard. Initially, was there just shock, or was there, I've known for a while?
As far as shock to me?
From her.
Oh, there was very big shock to her, I think.
So she didn't suspect anything at all?
No, she knew that we were living in kind of separate parts of the house, and but surely didn't know, to this magnitude. And we've always been very close and talked through different challenges, but this was one that I just had a hard time because I knew that it was going to have huge impacts to her. And one of the first persons I told was somebody that I had actually eventually hired. And that's where rumors were kind of going about. But I confided in her, and she really helped me get to the point where I was able to bring it to Kelly and be able to talk to Kelly about it. And trust me when I say it's been a long, difficult conversations. But we've been committed to making sure that, our kids are taken care of. I have a senior in high school and two that are going to be entering freshman year in high school. And I think, when you have that, you just want to make sure that, they're going to be faced with challenges in the sense of like, people might make fun of them or might question, some of the things. And so for me, it was like, no, we're going to make sure that we stay tight, and we're going to work through everything. And then, once they get through high school, we're going to evaluate where we're at. And I'm very grateful to have a partner like that in raising my kids.
So obviously, as you were getting hit with these allegations, at that point, you were not ready to publicly come out. Or was it just not ready for your kids to know?
That's actually a really good question, because I was at that point starting to feel like, okay, I was going through the search process, and and so I got selected to be the chief, and then I was feeling like, okay, maybe it is time for me to start coming out when the rumors started, and when I was like, okay, well, obviously I don't know if this is people are going to think, they're going to judge you however which way they're going to want to judge you, and they're going to want to say, oh, well, he's just coming out because of those rumors.
And to be clear, the rumors you're referring to, for those who haven't been following, it gets a little bit inside baseball, I suppose. But there were rumors that you were having an affair with your chief of staff, a female chief of staff.
Correct.
And that story had been out there for a while. I had heard about that probably a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
By now. I looked into it. It didn't seem to be a credible story, or if it was, I couldn't certainly prove it. And I know that other journalists in the area also looked into it. It seemed to be that it was being shopped around, for lack of a better term, and one outlet, KUOW, picked it up.
Yes. And, I think that, when they picked it up, we answered the questions that they'd asked, and it was actually a Facebook post that actually put it out there. And everyone started to try and figure out, okay, what's the validity to this? And even just so many different things on so many levels are just such false, even from the post to having complaints that are all anonymous. And even some of the complaints are very clear that like they're taken from the Facebook post. And so you're thinking, okay, like all this is going to easily be handled. Like people are going to ask the questions, you answer them, it's nonsense, and you move on. And it, as anything, they always say this too shall pass, right? And that's honestly what I thought. And it went from that to another set of allegations of these other things. And I always tell people, leadership brings a lot of scrutiny, and I'm all right with that. As the chief, you have to recognize that there's always going to be people that they're going to question your decision. They're not going to like your decisions. You're doing what's best for the department, and but it's hard to question my work ethic, because I'm always going to be around. Like, I will be there at 2:00 in the morning when a homicide happens. I will work, 13, 15-hour days to do whatever is needed to make sure that the city is safe. And so it's hard to question me on that. It's to try and challenge my character. And then that's where all of these other things permeated from.
Former SPD Chief Adrian Diaz joining me in studio. We're talking about the allegations made against him, what ultimately led to his dismissal, although I know we're not necessarily calling it a dismissal as the police chief. How did that happen? Because of the group of people who knew you were gay, I believe the mayor was involved. He knew?
Yeah, so, I had a good conversation with the mayor about 4 months ago, and he was very supportive. I was very appreciative of it. Is I said, like anybody, most will always say, like, come out when you're ready. This is, it should be your timeline. And I was very appreciative of that support. And I needed that support, because when you're going through a variety of things, you're working as many hours as you can. You're dealing with the challenges. You're dealing with a lot of the noise. And so having that support from the mayor was really crucial. For me, as I started to deal and deal with some more challenges, just it was like every 2 weeks there was another story. Every 2 weeks there was another story, and I knew that this was a very targeted effort, and so that's where it started to have a lot of concerns about, you know, because I knew all the validity of this was just completely nonsense, and that's the struggle that you deal with.
When you came out to him, I have to imagine he also recognized that it was highly unlikely that you were trying to sleep with one of the female officers. So for it to end the way that it did, how did that make you feel?
Well, it's hard because that the allegations are false. That,
And he did too.
Yeah, and that everything that kind of stemmed from that was false. And so and we did the third party, and I was really appreciative of when we did the third party
An investigation.
and a third party investigation. He had noted to me, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. And I said, hey, I really would like you to actually expand out that third party investigation into looking at how people use these systems, OPA, OIG, and HRIU, their investigative bodies of police wrongdoing, to look at how people abuse it against each other. And he said, that's it's a good point. He goes, let me check back with them, and they did, and they said, yeah, we can look into it. And so he actually took that advice and expanded the scope of the work. So I was very appreciative, because I was thinking, okay, like, we are being able to start looking and understanding like what's going on, and then the noise just kept on coming, and so we had the discussion, meet with the mayor, and at that time I felt like, okay, it's still a struggle. The officers do amazing work every single day, and I didn't want their work to be overshadowed by what was going on with me, and it was best that I kind of stepped aside and felt like, hey, get these investigations to come through, and I know I'll be vindicated out of it, and that's really been my focus. And I want to make sure that these investigations are done quickly, because for me, I don't want to live under this cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I don't deserve this, because I know who I am, and and I think everybody around me has expressed, they're like, these aren't you, and like, why can somebody just say that? And I've wondered the same thing, but I think right now for me, it's just, I got to be able to at least identify about who I am, and I think that's really important for me and my kids, for my kids to understand that, like, it's all right to say who you are, and not be afraid of it, and not be ashamed of it. It had come to me that people were trying to shame me into, or trying to embarrass me into coming out, and I hope that's not true. I hope those rumors were false, but I don't know nowadays. And with all of what's gone on, I think that for me, I have been so appreciative of all my friends and family that have grabbed and supported me through this whole journey.
You're implying then, it sounds like, so let me ask you directly, was it your decision to step aside?
We worked actually together on that with the mayor, on stepping aside, and I think that's one of the things that, for me as a leader, I want to make sure that the city thrives, and you have to sometimes know. I would have loved to still continue to do the job. Don't get me wrong. I love the city. I love the officers. I love this department. I believe that 27 years I've given my heart and soul to it, and I would have loved to finish out every ounce of my career here. And it makes me sad that I'm not able to. But I also know that you kind of know when that time is to say, okay, how do I actually make the department be able to move on? And that's where we were at.
In retrospect, had you come out earlier, would that have saved your job?
It's a good question. I think it addresses a lot of the concerns of what people had. I mean, it doesn't, just because you're a gay man doesn't mean that you can't be a misogynist, but I know who I am, and I know what I've done, and I know that I've been always true to myself and always treated people well and respectfully. I've never done that. And so I think that was really those challenges on your character are really hard because you want to be able to say who you are. And so coming out earlier, you wonder, no, I mean, I think that even if I came out earlier, I would have been attacked some other way. This wasn't, it just would have changed another way of being, and I tell people around me, like, if it wasn't this rumor, it would have been another rumor. If it wasn't this, it would have been something else, because, that is, where people feel like they deserve something. And for me, I want to be true to myself.
So you've made reference a few times now to a concerted effort, something that was done with intent, that this was coordinated in some way. Obviously, you're facing a number of complaints, or the department is, some lawsuits, some simply complaints that will eventually become lawsuits. Are you alleging that all of those people are working in concert with one another?
It's a great question. I think that, we know some of the stories, and the communication from those stories show that there is a connection.
How so?
Just from how the stories are laid out, and who they're talking with. But, again, I don't have, exact, like this person talk to this person, that kind of stuff. We do know that we've had other investigations that have shown, that have even cleared this rumor of it. In fact, somebody was terminated because they admitted to actually falsifying information.
Specifically, the alleged relationship with your chief.
Specifically to the relation of that. And so, I think that's where, and then you see the text messages associated that are part of that investigation, and you see the connections between certain people, and you start to then wonder, what is, was there a concerted effort in this? And that's something that I'm always thinking about.
Why would there be a concerted effort against you?
I think that, I think people want their own opportunities, and I was given the opportunity to serve as a chief, and it's not an easy job, and I think there's a lot of scrutiny and there's a lot of heartache in it, and no one should want this job, in the sense of there's just all eyes are on you. But I think sometimes, people feel like they deserve that opportunity, and I get it. Like I don't question people feeling like they want that opportunity, but everyone has that one point in time and to lead. And I think when you're leading, you hope that that people have the best interest in the department, and they want to serve the department in the best way. And I hope that, as now that I've stepped aside, that people can start making sure that they rally around what's important, and that is the men and women of this department just doing the work.
So I'm going to read in between the lines in that answer by pointing to a complaint that was filed by Deanna Nolette, a former assistant chief. She went for the chief position. She obviously did not get that. It went to you. Afterward, she was demoted to captain. She's claiming that this is a retaliation, in addition to making the claims about misogyny that happens under you and within your office. I remember part of the complaint was you made a joke about women being cheerleaders instead of playing on a softball team, something like that. Are you of the belief that she is behind this?
For me, obviously there's pending litigation, so I'm really limited in what I can say. I think once they get to all the evidence, from, threats of violence against the command staff to the investigation reports that were done by outside investigators to audits that were done, people will have a really great understanding of the situation, and that's where the facts will speak for itself in the court system. So that's really the reason why, for me, it's been really a struggle, because you want to allow the court process to play out. As the chief, I don't want to be airing this process in the news or social media. It's just, there's no place for that. But I know that I will feel that there's a level of vindication once we get through that process.
Why was she demoted?
Like I said, I think, well, number one, I think that that'll be part of that litigation, but I think that there'll be a sort of variety of different things that will eventually come out to understand that, all the command staff is at will position. Not only will you have, factual information, but you also have to develop your team. And as a chief, every chief before me had the right to pick their command staff. And I also had that right as well. And I'm looking for people that, as I said, you're not looking to hire somebody for a position. You're actually looking to hire the person. You're looking for their attitude and what they bring to the table, the agility, the innovation, the creativeness, people that are flexible and, can work around others. And so that was my commitment, is making sure that, that I did that. And I actually looked across the country. I really wanted to find people from across the country. And it was a struggle, because I had some good people potentially lined up. But it was a hard time. When you look at Seattle's news, people sometimes go, I don't know if I'm going to take on that challenge. And so I missed out on some opportunities of people from outside the department. And then you're trying to look inside, homegrown people that are really just trying to better the department as well. And that's the team that I put together.
Of the team members you put together, they also are now facing different levels of complaints, and have over the course of the last several months. I don't think they've been reported publicly, so I'm going to keep that out. But obviously 2 on the command staff, kind of in this realm, I suppose. Was that just them being targeted for being associated with you?
That's always been a question. You're wondering if, people, aside from those 2 people, but anybody that was associated with me, have received a number of complaints. And so people wonder, anybody that was associated, are they being targeted in that effort? And it's one of the reasons why it was important for me to request from the mayor that they look at how people potentially could weaponize these systems against their own department. And as one member had said to me, they had said, like an outside community member had filed a number of complaints against somebody in the department, and they said, people are weaponizing the system against them, and they could weaponize it against you, and so you start to then realize that that is the case, that can be done, because in an OPA system you want people.
That's the Office of Police Accountability.
Sorry about that. In an OPA system, you want people to relay their complaints, but when it's anonymous, it's hard, because you don't have that opportunity to really be able to address what that accuser is saying. And so that's one of the struggles with the process. But I think it's a good process. It's the city's built it after years and years of transforming it, but it's one of the hardest things to deal with when you're dealing with accusations that you're not really able to address.
Were you allowed to defend yourself?
At this
point, you didn't spend that much time defending yourself. You put out maybe 2 statements. One was a little aggressive, I suppose, but you didn't really spend that much time. Certainly, you weren't doing interviews defending yourself or your department.
No, because part of that is some of it's litigation, some of it's in claims, some of it's I had to have an outside attorney that was the one communicating with some of the media, because I really did struggle with my reputation is being compromised, and I want the opportunity to be able to highlight what work that we are actually doing. We've done an immense amount of work in race and social justice issues under my command. In fact, I've led it for the department for about 20 years. And, a whole host of areas that we've changed policing, our SB before the badge, our crowd management, our consent decree, you name it. We've done a whole host of work. And, people start to lose sight of that work when, people are making accusations. And I wanted an opportunity to be able to say something, but, you're also trying to make sure that you're towing the company line as well. And
what was the company line? What were you told that you could or could not say generally?
well, most people are saying, this is pending litigation and we can't talk about it. And yeah, but it doesn't. At some point, you're the legitimacy is attacked so much that you become ineffective in itself. And you have to be able to sometimes be able to address it and say, hey, look, this is not true. And
did you get a decree that basically said you have to say it's pending litigation, our policy is we can't speak, or did you infer that?
No, I mean, from the communication, a lot of that communication went through the mayor's office, and we worked with the mayor's office on it. And so, yeah, you have that communication, and that's one of the struggles with any system. You want to make sure that you're in the company line, but it's also something that, when it comes to your own personal, when people know who you are as a person, even as a gay man, and that it could actually address some of these issues, do you speak to it? And, I'm not trying to come out just because no, everyone that has ever come out can speak to this. You don't come out just to come out. This is not something that it makes it easy on your life. In fact, it makes it even harder on your life. There's so many things that people have to pay attention to, stuff that, attacks on things and, your family and your, in general, just your own well-being, to knowing what jobs you're going to have, to, where you're going to live. There's just so many factors in that. So no one just comes out to come out, but you also have to be able to say, who I am. And where my integrity is, what I've brought to the table, and I do want to be able to express myself, and so sometimes that doesn't always fit in alignment, and so now this is my time.
You obviously felt like it was possible for you to come out while you were working as chief without getting too much pushback in general from the public, is my guess. Seattle's a very progressive city. They probably would celebrate something like this. Were you ever told by anyone in the administration, in the mayor's office, not to come out?
That'll be something that will be discussed at a later time. But, I think for me and the community, as I've talked to a lot of members of the community, and, I've been really had just an immense amount of support. And as with anything, I'm sure that, people will try to, de-gay you or ungay you, to try and say that doesn't fit their narrative, and, or they'll try to, slap at you, and that's just part of this process. And
but you did get some resistance.
Yes. But right now for me is about trying to make sure that I move forward, and I move forward for the community.
But when there was pushback, did you understand what the thinking was?
Well, I'll let that for a later time. So no, but it's. I think for me right now, it's really about. I want people to really recognize that even just my struggles and my truth, that people want to feel comfortable being able to also come out and being able to open up about who they are.
So then, why today? Why on this show? Why did you make that decision?
So for me, I want to, number one, I want to make sure people understand who I am. I want to live my truth. I don't want to be hidden behind any, curtain or anything like that. I want, another opportunity to serve a city. And, it's not easy when you have, some false allegations against you. And I don't want to have any secrets if I decide to go to another city. And, I've already applied for another city. I'm hoping that, I've made the cut. But I don't know. I mean, I think those are the things that, people have said. You're extremely high qualified. You're one of the top chiefs in the country, and had these allegations not, come against you, you'd be hired by almost any agency. And you really struggle to hear that, because you know that they're false, and and you're like, yeah, but these are false. But so I've got to be able to also say who I am. And honestly, if I don't get a job, for a little bit of time, that's fine. But I also want others to really say, you know what, he came out. I have the opportunity to be also who I want to be. And so I think just for the good of just humanity, I think like that was important to me.
It's my understanding that you spoke specifically with Austin out of Texas to be their chief. How many interviews have you done with them?
We've just done an initial interview, and I hope that I can continue to move forward. I think Austin's a very progressive city, very similar to Seattle, and there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of struggles with staffing, and a variety of different challenges. They had crowd management issues during 2020. They're doing
the homeless crisis and drug use. I mean, it is very similar to Seattle.
It is very similar, and I think that's what also draws me into that. I think you, as any chief, you want to have the various challenges. At least for me, I if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, and for me, I like to be faced with the challenges. I want to test myself. I want to make sure that we have you have a good police department down there, just like us. Where the officers are doing the hard work, and sometimes with sometimes it's good support, sometimes minimal support, and you want to be able to highlight their work, and also be able to also put the things that in place for them to be successful. And so my hope is that people will see me for who I am, and what I can bring to the table. But I'm hoping that there's that opportunity, and if not, then you go back to the drawing board.
Were you thinking about leaving before all of this?
It's a good question, because I had actually talked to a lot of recruiters that have asked me about potentially leaving and going to other cities, bigger cities.
So they reached out to you.
Yeah, and being in Seattle and going through the 4 years that I went through in the toughest of times, I was the perf president on IACP board. So really recognized nationally. I was actually the chair of the Human Civil Rights Committee for IACP. So all of these kind of things kind of played into your kind of your resume, and so you get asked quite a bit, like, would you consider this? Would you consider this? And you have to find what's right for you. And so initially, no, I really honestly I wanted to see myself through Seattle. I wanted to finish out the challenges that were ahead, and the staffing crisis that's still going to plague the city for a number of years. And
you're now in the high 800s as far as deployable officers, at least as of June 3rd.
June 3rd. So, and that is right there the struggle, because every officer, you're dealing with the trauma of having to respond to every call for service. They've done a really good job of doing call prioritization and really trying to eliminate some of the calls, but it put the wear and tear are done on the officers. So you have to then create investments in wellness, and so I think those are challenges that I think any city that I take on, I want to be able to utilize my experience from Seattle to be able to help another city.
When you first took the job, were you ready?
That's a good question.
What were the rumors at the beginning, right? I mean, that you weren't ready.
Well, I think you start to wonder, you step on a line and everybody says, okay, who wants to be the chief? And everyone you looks at, everyone takes a step back, and it's you in the front. And but I knew the challenges that we were going to face. I knew that we had a serious, community connection issue.
And this was post Chop or Chaz. This was Carmen Best, former chief. She stepped down. She decided to leave over the number of slights made against the department, including during the defund movement, not only cutting her salary, but her top employee salaries, cutting SWAT team completely. And she said, no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, and so when you were experiencing that, and SWAT wasn't cut, but
it wasn't cut, but that was on the chopping block.
But there were a lot of things that really had created some limitations to be able to be effective, and she felt that no one was listening to her, and she felt she wasn't doing the job of being able to really be an effective chief, and so she did step away. I knew that the challenges were going to come. I knew that community was one that we needed to kind of reconcile with, and we needed to build trust again. And I feel like we've done a great job of really rebuilding community, where now people are like, we need more officers.
Mm-hmm.
Please, we need officers. And
you have a council that's much different than it was back then.
Much different. We had crowd management issues. We actually revamped it. Now we've completely reduced almost all use of force. We've reduced in crowd management situations. We've, reduced use of force in general. In Type 3 use of forces, we've only had 2 officer-involved shootings in 2 years. That's unheard of for a major city. The officers are doing amazing work, and so I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish as a team, and being able to lead that. As the chief, we've got ourselves back on the consent decree. And that was a big reset button. Mm-hmm. And 99 paragraphs were eliminated. And so, some would say, yeah, was he ready? Was anybody ever ready? And, I always tell people, because people go, well, gosh, you take on this role, like you could be eliminated, quickly. We're all interim chiefs. Like there was 79 of the 79 major cities almost had a complete revamping of a chief in the last 4 years. So, I knew that challenge going into it, and I was willing to take it on. And, people could always say, oh, you're a DI hire, or you're this, or you're that. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish. I'm proud of the department. And I live on the great work that we continue to do.
Did you feel like you could become a DE&I hire had you been out at the time? Did that play a role in not coming out at the time?
No, I think the bigger struggle was literally people starting to try to pick at everything that you do, in the sense of like, oh, he gets a little emotional. Oh, that he's not going to be strong enough, or he's going to be weak. We live in a progressive city, but you do have to recognize that people aren't necessarily completely supportive of different communities, and so I had to know that, and that's what was in my mind. And I'm not saying it was the best decision,
mm-hmm.
Not saying it before.
But also, didn't it also kind of play into some of the rumors in that you do have a very close relationship with your chief of staff, who is female. She's a very close friend of yours, and doing the simple thing of going to her apartment to help with fixing something that was then perceived to be, oh, well, they're sleeping together. I'm sure Officer Carson, when you said you would help with some housework, it never dawned on you that, oh, yes, I'm trying to sleep with her. But to her, maybe it did, because she did not know.
And that's actually funny, because, Carmen and I have been actually probably closer. And people had said, oh, we think that there might be a relationship there too. I've helped her actually do install her appliances. I've actually helped her with her back patio. I've helped, so there's so much work that I've done. And my neighbor, who's 90 years old, literally helped her out with her plumbing. Does that mean I'm going to sleep with her? It just isn't. And, it's sad, because even just talking with some of the female chiefs across the board, they're like, yeah, it was always rumored that they were sleeping with somebody, because you couldn't get any. People always will say, well, if they got somewhere, that's because that's the reason why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we even had an LGBTQ female assistant chief that also had accusations, and it's just not right. Sometimes that's the culture of the department too, and you really hope that just isn't what people do say about it, but that's a struggle. And I, for me, I have always known who I am, in the sense of like, I work hard. I know what I can produce. I know what I can do. I know what my thought is. And, I also, I've made a lot of changes in the department. And I think, I'm hoping that they will continue to take hold in better policing. But honestly, it's the work of the officers that they've done it. I mean,
Yeah.
think about 2 officer-involved shootings in Indianapolis. They had 19 in 1 year. In 2 years, we've done 2. And I think that's extraordinary work that has to be highlighted. And, for me, it isn't just about, the chief of staff. Like, I help everybody. And I have good friends that people would say the exact same thing. I have, one of my good friends in the South Park community, like, I was willing to take down her wall. And because, what people don't recognize is before I had this, my dad was a plumber by trade. And I actually had learned the skills of almost every aspect of remodeling homes. I've remodeled 4 homes. And
We have a shelf in here that needs to get installed if you want to stick around.
I know, that's exactly what. So for me, it's a level of, even just during COVID, I built a shed, I painted the house, I redid the fence. And a part of that is when you understand policing and when you want to create change, you start something and it takes like 3 or 4 years to create change. But when you do a remodel or when you do something, you can see results very quickly. And so it's almost a kind of this mental health kind of side of it. It's also a reason why I do photography. Like you're able to then grab that one shot and be able to pull it out and say, like, this is what captures the moment. And so when you're the chief, you have a lot of stresses. And so you're constantly trying to figure out how to navigate those stresses, and you have to find those outlets. And so literally, I guess you could say outlets, but you try to find those opportunities to help you through that. And so I've always been willing to help people. And so just to have that, be turned into something else, it was crazy in my mind. But yeah.
So last question for you. If there was that snapshot of your career over the last 4 years as chief, catching you in that moment, how would you want to be remembered as chief?
I think really about just how much this department has evolved and changed since 2020. And also to where we're in a good place. We finally got a contract. We've gone through the consent decree for the most part. We've just have, a couple elements that we're still working through. We've revamped crowd management. We're moving forward on technology that I think will allow us to really be effective in World Cup, to have cameras in and around throughout the city. I think those are all extremely good attributes that I've been able to navigate in the most challenging times. I mean, a city council that was not always favorable to us, and being able
that's an interesting bit of spin,
and being able to get the votes that were needed for some of the work that we were able to accomplish. That's a lot of relationships that had to be built. And I really think that, over the course of my career, I would want people to recognize that everything we do is about relationships. We have to build those connections. We have to understand humanity and kindness. And that is what I've brought to the table.
Well, I'm grateful that you chose to tell your story here. I'm grateful that you were able to take time off of the nebulously defined special projects department that I guess you're now in. I'm assuming city does not know you're doing this?
Well, I'm actually, I've had a cough for probably about over a year and 3 months. That has just been a persistent cough. In fact, I was in the doctor's yesterday on a Sunday getting some more medicine. And so, yeah, I'm actually addressing that. So I'm actually I still have it, as you can already hear throughout even this discussion, that I still have that cough that just kind of persists. And so that's what I'm working to address as well. So I'm taking a little bit of time off for my own health and hoping that I'll be able to get back to feeling 100%.
So best of luck, and thank you so much for coming into the studio. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show on AM 770 KTTH.